Okay, now today we are going to learn about communication services. So communication is a very important supporting service. Okay, and it is a communication is very important for the successful operation in a business. For the success of any organization, communication is very important. Okay, communication is known as the exchange of message, information, and ideas among different parties through any medium. So communication is the exchange of messages, information, and ideas among different parties through a medium. Okay. So you will exchange messages, information, and ideas among different parties through a medium. Okay. Three things. One, among different parties through any medium. So today, a revolutionary growth can be observed in communication parallel to development in information technology. Accordingly, different communication methods are in use. In this competitive market, communication technology has become an essential service for the success and survival of the businesses. So, communication is very important for the success and survival, not just the success as well as survival of the business. Let's say you are doing some contract, and if you cannot get the information about that contract, for example, gazetting that contract, okay, if you cannot get it on time, what happened? You will not at least able to apply for that contract. අපි හිතමු මොන හරි construction contract project එකක් government එක දානවා. You don't get the information, or else you are not communicating it properly to your contract that I am going to bid for this contract. Then what happened? You will not get the contract at least. Okay. So communication is important to obtain required information for the business as well as to provide information to various stakeholders of the business. So it's two-way. Okay, it's two-way. It's two-way. So it's important that you receive information to business as well as you are giving information to your stakeholders. Okay, various stakeholders. Since we are now living in an information technology era, communication is vital for businessmen in order to make different decisions. Now, today we live in a information technology area. So let's say that I want to do a business. Okay. Now, the information on that particular context is very important. For example, let's say I want to do I want to do a chocolate business. Okay. Then I want to know about what kind of chocolate flavors are interested among this community. Is it fruit and nut? Is it caramel? Is it coffee flavor? Or is it plain vanilla flavor? Likewise, what is the flavor that is desired by these people? That is important. For that, I need to get that communication. I needed to be communicated. Okay. So anything is dependent on information and technology as well as communication. So let's write down the note. I will read this out once and then you can write it. Okay. Communication is, write the subheading as communication services. Communication is an important supporting service required for successful operation of a business. Communication is an important support service required for successful operation of a business. Communication is known as the exchange of messages, information, and idea among different parties through any medium. So please do highlight this. Okay. Communication is known as exchange of messages, information, and ideas among different parties through any medium. Okay. Today, revolutionary growth can be observed communication parallel to development of information technology. Accordingly, different communication methods are in use. In this competitive market, communication technology has become an essential service for the success and survival of businesses. The communication is important to obtain required information for the business as well as to provide information to various stakeholders of the business. Since we are now living in an informational technology era, communication is vital for businessmen in order to make different decisions. Take a couple of minutes and write this. So let's look at what are the main parts of communication. Communication can be divided into two main parts depending on various stakeholders. One is internal communication, second being external communication. So communication can be divided into two main parts, which is internal communication and external communication. Okay. So internal communication, what is meant by internal communication? This means communicating messages, information, and ideas via various mediums between different parties within an organization. So important thing is this communication is within the organization. This communication always occur among owners, managers, and other employees. So who are the internal parties? Owners, managers, and employees. Since internal communication is required when performing the business activities, the frequency of occurrence of this communication is very high. අපි business activities කරද්දී මේ internal communication එක වෙන frequency එක හරිම වැඩි. Further, in internal communication, the distance between the sender and the receiver is minimum. ඇයි organization එක ඇතුළෙම ඉන්නේ? ඒ නිසා the distance between the sender and the receiver is also very small. So let's write about these things. Put the subheading as main parts of communication, and please write this. Communication can be divided into two main parts depending on the various stakeholders: internal communication and external communication. So depending on the stakeholders that we are dividing it. Internal parties, we do the internal communication. External parties, we do the external communication. Take only 1 minute to write this. Quickly write it. Okay, then let's write this internal communication. This means communicating messages, informations, and idea via various mediums between different parties within an organization. Okay, this communication always occur among owners, managers, and other employees. Since internal communication is required when performing the business activities, the frequency of occurrence of this communication is very high. Further, in internal communication, the distance between the sender and the receiver is minimal. Okay, so take a couple of minutes and write this. Okay, then let's look at external communication. External communication is the communication of business with external individuals and external organizations. So business with external individuals and external organizations. This communication occurs with individuals such as different customers, suppliers, retailers, wholesalers, and agents, and with governmental and other organizations. So business is communicating with different customers, suppliers, retailers, wholesalers, agents, and governments. Okay. The external communication occurs in less frequency compared to internal communication. External communication එක ගත්තම internal communication එකත් එක්ක බලද්දී ලොකු ලොකු frequency එකක් නැහැ, right? It's not a very frequent one. However, the distance between the sender and the receiver is relatively high. It is not internal, it is outside the business. So the distance of communication is relatively high. So take a couple of minutes and write this. Take a couple of minutes and write this. Okay. Now, different communication mediums used by businesses. Now we are going to learn about different communication mediums. A business uses different communication mediums for communicating with internal and external parties. Depending on their nature, the communication mediums can be categorized as follows, right? Nature of the communication, verbal. Examples of communication mediums, meetings, discussions, workshops, conference, and telephone conversations. Then, nature of the communication, written, mediums, letters, notice board, reports, handbills, newspapers, magazines, banners, and posters. Then, nature of the communication, electronic, loudspeakers, digital display boards, email, fax, internet, broadcasting medium, telecasting medium, and social websites. Then, codes and signals, road signals, universally accepted signals, and bell. So those are the communication mediums. Bell එක අපි ස්කෝලේදී bell එක ගහන්නේ, that's a communication medium. It's a signal. Okay. Now, if you look at, there are large display boards, email, fax, internet, they are all electronic mediums. Then written, letters, notice board, reports, handbills, newspapers, magazines, etc. Verbal, meetings, discussions, workshops, conferences, and telephone conversations. Okay. So, different communication mediums used by businesses. Although above communication mediums are categorically broadly into four, most of the time they cannot be limited only to one category depending on the nature of the communication. දැන් අපි ඔක categorically හතරකට දැම්මට හරිද? ඒකේ හැමම නැහැ කියන එක තමයි කියන්නේ. For example, let's say telephone conversation includes both electronic and verbal, right? Email, both written and electronic. Skype, electronic, verbal, written, right? So take a couple of minutes and please write this slide. So although the above communication mediums are, just write it down after that chart. Although above communication mediums are categorically broadened into four, most of the time they cannot be limited only to one category depending on the nature of the communication. Example, telephone conversations, electronic and verbal. Email, electronic and written. Skype, electronic, verbal, and written. Take 1 minute and write this.
Could you?
Then the process of communication. Okay. So communication is not a single activity, but a process comprised of few common elements. Communication can be a single activity, but it has like sort of different elements. Among different communication, these elements are mostly common. Okay. Sender, the person or the institution who is sending the message. Message, information conveyed by the sender. Medium, the communication used for the communication medium used for sending the message. So we learned about a lot of communication mediums earlier. Okay, we learned about meetings, discussions, workshop, letters, likewise lot of mediums. Okay. Then receiver, the person who is receiving the message. Then response, how the receiver act on the message. Then feedback, that is reply, either verbally or non-verbally, regarding the message sent from receiver to sender. Okay, so there are few common elements: sender, message, medium, receiver, response, and feedback. Okay, okay, let's write it down. Take a couple of minutes and write this. Okay. Then the process of communication. Now we learned about common elements. So starting from the sender, message, then the medium, then receiver, reaction, and feedback. Okay. So this process can be explained by the figure given below. So what is happening? Send is sending the message using a medium. So receiver receives it, and then receiver provides a reaction, and sender provides a feedback. Okay. So this is the feedback. So it could be verbal or non-verbal and sent from the sender. So take a couple of minutes and write this. Okay, students, with that, we will wrap up today's session. So we have a very small section left out. We will complete that in the next week, and we will be completing the communication services part as well. So thank you so much. Okay, so we studied about process of communication, starting from the sender, the message, the medium, the receiver, reaction, feedback, and then looping back to sender. Okay, so today we are going to learn about, or else we are going to learn about the factors to be considered when selecting an appropriate medium for the communication. So we are going to look at what are the factors that we have to look at when we are going to select a communication medium. So we already learned. Now, based on the nature of the communication, there are number of communication mediums. Okay, so if it is verbal, there are meetings, discussions, workshops, conferences, and telephone conversations. Then in case of written communication, we have letters, notice boards, reports, handbills, newspapers, magazines, banners, etc. Then in terms of electronic, we have loudspeakers, digital display boards, emails, fax, internet, broadcast medium, telecast medium, social website, and all that. Then, in terms of codes and signals, we have road signals, universally accepted signals, and bells. Okay, so we learned, even though it has been categorized like this, nature of communication, it has been categorized like this based on the actual requirement. There could be number of dependency on uh, uh, communication mediums. There are, like, for example, all the above communication mediums are categorized broadly into four. Most of the time they cannot be limited only to one category depending on the nature of the communication. That means, like, let's say, for example, telephone conversation, is it verbal or electronic? Okay, like, it is broad, right? Email, it's electronic and written. Okay, Skype, it is electronic, verbal, and written. So you cannot, like, even though for the purpose of, like, sort of like studying, we categorize this based on this. They, like, if we take the email communication medium, like, they fall onto different forms. For example, even written, right? If we take Skype, which is electronic, it falls onto written and verbal both. Okay. So, but if you look at here now, in these cases, now let's see, if even though it falls to verbal or written, if it is electronic, in this case, it is being put to electronic category. Okay, so, like, electronic category has been given priority. Okay. So let's look at what are the factors to be considered when selecting an appropriate medium for the communication. Any individual or an institution need to consider several factors when selecting a communication medium in order to carry out communication activities productively and effectively. So, like, let's say you are an individual or you are an institution, you need to consider number of factors when selecting a communication medium. Okay, because you need to be very productive as well as effective. Okay, so for both of them, you need to consider number of factors. So what are they? Appropriateness. Okay, factors to be considered when selecting appropriate medium for communication. Appropriateness. So the appropriate communication medium requires to be selected depending on the information expected to be communicated and the objectives of communication. So firstly, we need to see whether it is appropriate. ඒක ගැළපෙනවද කියලා අපි බලන්න ඕන. Based on the information that is that we are going to communicate and based on the objectives, is it appropriate? Let's say we want to communicate a confidential message. Okay, then can we use newspapers or something like posters? Like, can we use communication mediums like that? No, we cannot, because it is not appropriate. That does not fit the objective of communication. Okay, that does not fit the objective of the communication. So we have to look at the objectives of the communication as well as the information that is expected to be communicated. So based on that, we will decide whether it is appropriate or not. Okay, then speed. Okay, appropriate communication mediums need to be selected depending on how quickly the information to be delivered. Let's say I want to communicate to United States of America, and I want to communicate it within let's say 30 minutes. Okay, I want to say that I have done some financial transaction and I want to communicate to them. Okay, then what is the, can I use something like letters, typical letters? No, I cannot. I have to use something like email. I have to inform them quickly. Okay. Then cost. The total cost of communication is an important factor to be considered. Due to advancement in technology, low-cost communication methods have been created. For example, short message service. Now, cost matters. Okay, cost matters. Now, if you look at SMS services, we will have to pay per SMS, right? But if you look at communication methods like WhatsApp, we don't have to pay for that. Like compared to, let's say, if it is a telephone call, we will have to pay for it very much, right? We will have to pay for it very much. But let's say it is a WhatsApp call, then we don't have to pay for it. Let's say I want to call to UK, United Kingdom. And if I'm supposed to take a routine telephone call over my communication, the GPS line provider, let it be, for example, Dialog, Mobitel, Hutch, I don't know, Airtel. Likewise, there are so many mobile network providers. No, let's say I have that option and I have WhatsApp option. Then WhatsApp is cost effective. Okay, but sometimes we will have to use the GPRS. I mean these network providers as our medium of communication. I mean the general telephone line, because sometimes WhatsApp may not be like allowed in some countries. For example, countries like Middle East, they do not allow WhatsApp. Clarity. The receiver should be able to understand the message clearly. So it should be, there should be clarity. Okay. If there is no clarity, what happens? That message cannot be understood clearly. Okay. Then easy to use. Communication medium should be easy to use depending on the knowledge and skills of the sender and receiver. එතකොට මේක පාවිච්චි කරන්න ලේසි වෙන්න ඕන. Let's say we have a communication method now. I have seen in ships and all that. Can you remember that we see in movies where based on this, I don't know what it is called, based on number of like all these touches and everything you do, you can communicate message like how you tap it, how you tap that pad. Based on that, you can communicate it. Is it easy to use? No, it is not. But in naval communication, maybe it is a medium of communication. Maybe in submarines and all that, that may be a method of communication when you are in trouble. And
You mean the Morse code?
Must be, yeah. So it's dependent on the ease of use. What is a, so I think it is called Morse code. It's Morse code, I think. So likewise, it is dependent on the situation. Okay. So there are different mediums, but is it easy to use? That is something that we have to look at. Okay, then we can write down the note. Factors to be considered when selecting an appropriate medium for communication. Uh, so you can, I will read this out so you can write it. Any individual or an institution need to consider several factors when selecting a communication medium in order to carry out communication activities productively and effectively. So what are these factors? Appropriateness. An appropriate communication medium requires to be selected depending on the information expected to be communicated and objectives of communication. Then speed. An appropriate communication medium need to be selected depending on how quickly the information to be delivered. Then cost. The cost of the communication is an important factor to be considered. Due to the advancement in technology, low-cost communication methods have been created. For example, short messages services, so SMS. So you can even say WhatsApp. Clarity. The receiver should be able to understand the message clearly. Okay. So let's say, for example, you want to communicate something, and let's say you are communicating over the voice, and over the voice, due to network errors, you are not receiving it clearly. Then you can just drop a WhatsApp or other message, which includes clarity. The message is clearly communicated. Then ease to use. The communication medium should be easy to use depending on the knowledge and the skills of the sender and the receiver. So that Morse code example that we told, so it's depending on the knowledge and the skills of the sender and the receiver. Okay, not everyone knows it. Okay, but if it is a broader message, then it should be easy to use. So it is dependent. That is why appropriate matters. Okay, so take a couple of minutes and write this. Okay, with that, we have come to the final part of communication services. So then we have transportation services. So before going into transportation services, let's very quickly look at what are the things we discuss under communication services. Okay, so earlier we studied about insurance services. So now let's see what are the things that we discuss in communication services. So initially we discussed about the communication services, its importance and its relevance. Okay, what is it? Okay, communication is known as the exchange of messages, information and ideas among different parties through any medium. Okay, then we learned about the importance of communication for business activities. Okay, the usage of information and communication technology, and what are the other improvements. For example, what are given the competitive market and uh, evolvement in IT and all that, communication technology is very essential for any service to be successful, and it's very essential for the survival of the business. Okay, and then we learned about two main things. Okay, communication can be divided into two main parts. Those are based on internal and external communication. Okay, internal communication means sharing or communicating messages, information, and ideas via various mediums between different parties within an organization. Okay, so the important thing there is it's different parties within the organization. Then it is happening among owners, managers, and other employees. Okay, so it's very frequent, and distance is minimum. So those are the important things. Then we learned about external communication. That is the communication of business with external individuals and organizations. Business with external parties. Okay. So this includes customers, suppliers, retailers, wholesalers, and agents, governments, likewise. Okay. Now it is less frequent, one important thing, and distance is relatively high. Okay. Then we discuss about different communication mediums nature of the communication. Based on nature of the communication, there are verbal, written, and electronic code and signals. And then what are the mediums? It's all here. Okay, today also we discuss about it. And then we learned about process of communication. So communication is not a single activity, but a process comprised of few common elements. So communication එක කියන එක ගත්තම මේ common elements ටික හැම එකෙම තියෙනවා. Okay. So what are they? There is sender, the person or institution sending the message. Message, information conveyed by the sender. Medium, the communication medium used for the sending message. Receiver, the person receiving the message. Response, how the receiver act on the message. And feedback, reply either verbal or non-verbal regarding the message sent from the receiver to sender. Okay. Receiver ගේ නම් sender එකට reply එක තමයි feedback එක කියලා කියන්නේ. So we need to remember all these elements. Okay. These common elements, we need to remember them, and then we should be able to draw this diagram. Okay. Sender, then message, then medium, receiver, reaction, feedback. Okay, this is the process of communication. Then we learned about factors to be considered when selecting an appropriate medium for the communication. Okay, it should be appropriate. Communication medium should be appropriate. Okay, it should have the right speed. It should be cost effective, cost reflective. Okay, your medium should reflect your cost, how relevant it is, and how cost effective it is. Likewise, okay, and it should be clear, or there should be clarity in the messages, and medium should be easy to use. So those are the factors to be considered when selecting an appropriate medium of communication. So those are the things that we learned under communication services. And nextly, we will be moving on to a new part, which is transportation services.